Thanks, Jack. All of those things are true. My name is Kendall, and I do go to The Ohio State University. I am an entomology graduate student. I do plan on getting my PhD, and I love coming to Ecology on Tap. I also have presented here before, so if you're a repeat Ecology on Tap offender, you might recognize this slide, but I did change it up a little bit, really last minute, so we'll see how that goes. One of the things I really enjoy about being a graduate student is doing things like this where I get to engage with the public. And now that we have awesome recording technology, I get to say something really cool that I've always wanted to say, which is, "Hi, Mom." Okay, so by a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with parasitoid wasps? All right. Hopefully I don't bore you guys. You guys know everything already. How many of you have been parasitized by a parasitoid wasp? Good. There shouldn't be any hands up in the air right now because they don't parasitize humans. Regardless, they do catch a lot of human attention, specifically in the media. And so what I've done here is I've actually pulled some of the top four Google searches for parasitoid wasps, and I want to read them to you because they're really scary. Darwin's classic monster, the parasitoid wasp. Parasitic wasp turns roaches into zombie slaves using neurotoxic cocktail. New crypt keeper wasp is a parasite that bursts from its host's head, and this wasp mind controls spiders into building it cozy webs. What on earth did parasitoids do to deserve this kind of media attention? And are they this scary? Absolutely, if you're an insect. They're completely terrifying. But before I get more into that, I do want to talk about some of the differences between normal parasites that we think of and parasitoids. So some of our traditional parasites are like ectoparasites, human parasites, which are ticks and fleas. And ectoparasites mean that they actually hang out on the outside of their host, so they're not burrowing or living within our guts. And these guys don't really have any intention of killing us necessarily. Now, they can transmit diseases and pathogens that can kill us, but that's not their original intention. In fact, they actually want to maintain this fine balance of parasitism, rate of parasitism versus their host vitality, because their host is their food source. They wouldn't want to get rid of their host at all. And so what ectoparasites can do is they just drop off of their host when they're done eating, when they have to move on to a different life stage. There's all kinds of reasons. But parasitoids absolutely do not just drop off their host. They use their host's body completely for their life cycle. And so parasitoids, unfortunately, for insects, can target all different life stages. So here we have an egg parasitoid. This is Trisulcus wasp emerging from a stink bug egg. So this wasp is only like a millimeter in length. And then we also have a larva parasitoid. I'm sure you guys are a little bit more familiar with these. These are braconids that parasitize things like tomato hornworms. And so those might look like fuzzy Tic Tacs, but they're not. Don't eat those. Those are pupae. So that's when a wasp will lay a ton of eggs inside of a really large caterpillar. They will hatch and become larvae and eat the inside out. And then they burst out of the skin, and then they create these little Tic Tac looking pupae on the outside, waiting to start their cycle over again. Now, maybe and perhaps the most scary, terrifying fact of all is how incredibly species diverse parasitoids are if you're an insect, because it's projected for every species of insect that exists, there's a parasitoid that is targeting it and hunting it down. And of all the hundreds of thousands of parasitoids that we may know of on the books today, I want to focus on one, which is the jewel wasp. And this jewel wasp is featured in the smear campaign, which is the cocktail zombie slaves headline. And I actually want to demystify this a little bit by going more into the chemistry, the behavior, the physiology behind the story. And the headline doesn't do it justice. It gets just worse from after the headline. After the cocktail, it gets so much uglier, like most series of cocktails will. All right, so this is the first cocktail ingredient. It is a gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA for short. It is a neurotransmitter, and this is responsible for immobilizing the cockroach initially. The second one is an octopamine neurotransmitter antagonist. And so this octopamine is responsible for letting the insect make decisions about where it's going to go, what it's going to do, and the wasp wants it to become a zombie. So it's going to completely get rid of this and with an antagonist that will attack this molecule. And neurotransmitters are always made and found in neurons. So right here we have 2 neuron bodies, and these neurons interact at a synaptic cleft. And so that looks a lot like this. And these synaptic clefts are where the neurotransmitters are produced and released. And so that's where the neurotransmitters are, this pink stuff is floating between, and that's going to send a signal, and it's either going to be an excitatory signal or an inhibitory signal. Regardless, it's going to send this signal on and on for each neuron to the brain. And so this is a depiction of the insect brain, and it's connected. You can see there's all these neurons. This is a thoracic ganglia right here, and this is what innervates things like the legs and the wings of an insect. And so, of course, if you can hijack this using some small, relatively inexpensive to make cocktail ingredients, you can take over your entire host, which is pretty neat. So let's look at this behavior. If you give this wasp its host, like this delicious, juicy cockroach, first of all, she's going to turn around because she's going to inject this cocktail with her butt. It's a butt cocktail. I don't know if they serve those here. Probably not very good. And she's going to administer the first sting. And this is going to be the GABA neurotransmitter, and it's going to go in the thoracic ganglia, and it's going to get rid of the motility of those first legs. And so this is going to inhibit the cockroach from running away. Whereas now she can actually administer her second sting. And so this is going to be that octopamine antagonist, and that's going to go directly into the brain. And then that is going to inhibit its decision-making skills. So now this cockroach, it can walk still. It just can't make any decisions. It can't do anything. So she sits around and waits for a little bit. And when she's done waiting, she'll actually amputate one of the antennae or both of the antennae of the cockroach, and she'll taste its hemolymph. And now hemolymph is just basically insect blood. And what it's thought to be for is to measure the concentration of these neurotoxins. I'm pretty critical of that sentence because I don't know how an insect would measure concentration. But essentially, if she administers too much of this toxin cocktail, she could kill her host before the grand finale. If she administers too little, her host might gain consciousness and run away again before the grand finale. But if it's just right, she'll actually grab a hold of the cockroach's head with her mandibles, and she'll start dragging it. Well, not dragging, because it can walk. She starts leading it towards its burrow. And so once she's in that burrow, she actually barricades. This is the lines of the burrow. And she'll barricade in that cockroach after laying an egg on the outside of its body. And so once that cockroach wakes up, it's underground, and it's barricaded in, and it can't go anywhere. It sounds eerily like Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado, does it not? Yeah, so it's doomed. And so essentially what happens, she lays this egg, and this egg hatches, and it burrows inside of the body of the cockroach, and it eats it from the inside out and pupates. So that's what each life stage looks like. We have the egg, we have a few of the larval stages, and then we have this pupa with the wasp actually developing within. And so this is all happening within the host itself. And then when it's time to come out, the wasp will chew its way out of the body of the dead cockroach now, and she continues her zombie enslaved empire. And that is exactly the story of how a parasitoid can turn a cockroach into a zombie slave using a neurotoxic cocktail. And if you liked learning more about parasitoids and you want to spend more time talking to me, you can come to our open house at our museum. So the Museum of Biological Diversity hosts an open house event every spring. So 2020, the date is set for March 21st. We open up all of our collections, so not just our triple horn insect collection, but all of the other collections too. And you can like us on Facebook and follow our events. And that's the end of my spiel, I promise. And I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you so much for listening.